All right. Welcome to the 2026 Dialogue, a masterclass series by the HR Association of India. I am Neha Jagnani, and today we are exploring a topic that is reshaping how organizations think about skills, roles, productivity, and leadership. Our theme for the session today is AI ready workforce, how HR can build skills, mindset, and leaders for the AI era. To explore this important conversation, we are joined by Danish Shaikh. Danish is an HR and organizational development leader with over 16 years of experience. He heads the HR Center of Excellence at ACG Capsules and is pursuing a PhD in psychological safety, allyship, and inclusive leadership. He has led large scale HR transformations and built talent systems aligned with business performance. Recognized as Asia HR Director of the Year and a 40 under 40 honoree, he is also an ICF-certified coach and published researcher. Danish, thank you so much for joining. It's a pleasure having you.
My pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. I look forward to this exciting masterclass, Danish. So, to begin with, my first question is, beyond AI literacy, I want to know, what does an AI workforce actually look like, and what capabilities should HR be building now to prepare for the next 3 to 5 years?
Sure. So, for me personally, AI ready workforce, is one that can use AI effectively. I mean, we all know that, but it should also exercise judgment over it, redesign work around it, and ultimately imagine new possibilities because of it. So there are like four levels. Okay, that's the way I think of it. So the first level, of course, is use. Then there is judge. Then there is redesign, and then there is reinvent. So AI fluency that you spoke about is all about use. Whether people can use the tools effectively, can they prompt well, do they understand limitations, do they understand privacy, responsible use. That's important, but increasingly that's going to become table stakes.
Right.
The second level, which is a bit more complex, is judge. Now, can I look at an AI generated answer and determine whether it's actually good? Whether I can actually recognize hallucination or bias in that data.
Right.
Do I know what I can delegate to AI? And do I know where human expertise needs to prevail? So there's like an interesting paradox, as AI gets better, human judgment becomes more important, not less, because incorrect outputs will become so convincing that we will need to get that much smarter to be able to identify those inconsistencies because before they become expensive to us. And then of course there comes redesign, like being in HR, for example. If I look at recruitment, now if AI helps a recruiter write a JD in 5 minutes instead of 30 minutes, that's productivity, but that's not transformation, right? The bigger question is if AI can support sourcing, it can support assessment, candidate communication, interview preparation, onboarding, or whether recruitment itself should be looked at the way it's done today. That's what happens at this stage.
Yeah.
And then finally is the reinvent stage, something where what can we do now that wasn't practical before. Now imagine moving from periodically analyzing some few thousand employee survey comments to continuously synthesizing qualitative employee inputs and giving leaders personalized insights. Now that's a new capability. That's not doing something that we were doing before, but faster. So given this context of these four levels, that's when you look at what are the capabilities that HR should build. So my pick would be these six. First and foremost, AI fluency, then critical judgment, work redesign, learning agility, human differentiation, and responsible AI judgment. And these aren't AI skills, like not all of them. Like AI fluency and responsible AI are technology specific. Critical judgment and work redesign, they enable people to work with AI. And then we need these human capabilities of curiosity, creativity, empathy, influence, contextual judgment. Now, I was reading a few articles a few days ago because I'm doing some work in the AI space, and the World Economic Forum also reinforces these capabilities. And we expect that 39% of key skills will change by 2030. Now, AI and big data are rapidly rising, right? But at the same time, creative thinking, resilience, curiosity, lifelong learning are also learning at the same space.
Sure.
And I wouldn't build these capabilities equally for everyone. Now, everyone needs AI fluency, everyone needs judgment, responsible use. Now, AI augmented roles would need a deeper applied AI and work redesign capability. The specialists would be the one who need more domain specific expertise. And if you look at the leadership cadre, they would need more of AI strategy, org redesign, change leadership, and governance. So I don't think in future we would be able to measure readiness by how many people have completed AI training. We are actually supposed to ask, are people working differently because AI exists? So that's the difference. AI literacy is knowing how to use AI. AI readiness is knowing how to read.
Right. Beautifully put. I think, the fluency, judgment, redesigning, and reinvent, all very fundamental yet very critical pieces. If one of them even misses out, things can get affected. And as you rightly said, everyone will need a different capability to create that ecosystem. For specialists, as you rightly said, it's more domain knowledge. For leaders, it's more governance. It's more how strategically it's been augmented. So thank you so much for your inputs, Danish. My next question is, as AI begins to automate tasks rather than entire jobs, how should HR rethink job architecture, workforce planning, and upskilling, and decide what work should remain human, become AI augmented, or be automated fully?
So I think AI, especially from the HR perspective, HR itself needs to make a fundamental shift from planning jobs to architecting work. Now, right now, all, and I wouldn't say all, but most HR architecture is built around jobs, whether they're job descriptions, grades, competencies, manpower plans, career paths, succession plans. But AI doesn't look at it from a job lens.
Yeah.
AI encounters tasks. Now, the ILO studied around 30,000 tasks and found that 1 in 4 workers globally is in an occupation with some exposure to generative AI. But its conclusion is particularly important that transformation rather than complete replacement is the more likely outcome. So, instead of starting with which jobs will disappear, I would deconstruct that into 4 categories. And those 4 categories are automate, augment, humanize, and create. Now, automate is what can AI reliably perform. Augment is more about where can AI analyze, recommend, generate, while a human provides the context and judgment.
Right.
Humanize is what becomes more valuable precisely because a human does it. Whether it's empathy, influencing, negotiation, ethical judgment, relationships. And then, of course, there's create. Now, what kind of new work becomes possible because of the fact that AI exists now? And the last category is important because otherwise AI becomes a cost reduction conversation. Now, you know, we've been having a lot of conversations around workforce restructuring in the industry and how do we reduce headcount. Now, take an HRBP role. Now, if I look at that role, AI could potentially take over significant amounts of their work, like reporting, presentation creation, policy interpretation, data consolidation, and routine employee queries. So the response as an organization would be great. Now we'll need fewer HRBPs.
Right.
But there's another possibility, right? What if we use that capacity to create a better HRBP from scratch? Someone who spends more time diagnosing organizational problems, coaching leaders, interpreting workforce signals, facilitating difficult conversations, influencing business decisions. Now, that job has not disappeared. It's just that the center of gravity around which it revolved, that center of gravity has now moved.
Right.
And that's why I believe that work redesign should precede upskilling. But we often do the opposite. We identify future skills, create courses, train people,
Right.
right? And I'd start by saying, uh, what should this role be doing 3 years from now? What will AI do? What will the human do? What will they do together? And what entirely new work becomes possible? And then you redesign the role, right? And then once you've done that, then you determine what skills are required for that role. And only then build a workforce plan. So the sequence that I'm talking about is first identify the work, break it down into tasks. From those tasks, you categorize them into human and AI allocation. Then you redesign the role, then identify the skills, and then create your workforce plan. So that way, that also changes the conversation, right? From how many people do we need to what combination of human capability and machine capacity do we need? And we're already beginning to see that language emerge in organizations. Now, Microsoft has done some research, and that also talks about determining what is the right human agent ratio. And that ratio will be tracked for different kinds of work. So, the future of workforce planning to me isn't predicting which jobs AI will eliminate. It's more about designing how work should be divided between humans and machines, and then rebuilding our jobs around that answer.
Great perspective, very comprehensive, Danish. So there is work, there is tasks, there is allocating those tasks to humans and how much you allocate to AI, redesigning your role, and therefore doing the workforce planning. The whole flow actually changes the perspective rather than, drawing the conclusions beforehand. And loved how you mentioned the automate does, it tells us what needs to be automated. The augmented AI is where you need AI to assist. The human element is which is something that values empathy, relationships, and finally create, that tells you how new work is possible with the help of technology and human. So thank you so much for putting that perspective forward. My next question, Danish, is why do some organizations struggle to translate AI adoption into actual productivity gains, and what role should HR play in redesigning workflows, behaviors, and performance expectations to close the gap?
So I think one reason is that we're trying to put 21st century intelligence into 20th century workflows. We deploy AI, we train employees, we track adoption, and assume transformation will follow. But
Right.
there are actually three different levels of value that can be created. The first, of course, is the one that we've actually achieved, which is efficiency. But more important than that is also effectiveness and transformation. These are the three levels. Now, AI at the efficiency level, it helps me to do the same work faster. At the effectiveness level, it helps me to do the work better. So, better analysis, more personalization, better decisions. But transformation is altogether different. That is when we are asking the question, why are we still doing this work this way at all? Imagine a process now with 9 approvals, 4 handoffs, 3 spreadsheets, 2 meetings. When we introduce AI and reduce the time required to prepare those 9 approval notes, that's more of efficiency. But we have simply automated bureaucracy, right? The transformational question here is, why are there 9 approvals? So I think AI transformation increasingly becomes an org effectiveness problem. And that's why HR has a much larger role to play than simply driving the adoption of AI. Again, I'll use a small 4-part model, which is stop, simplify, augment, and reinvent. So, what should we stop because it no longer creates value? What should we simplify before we automate it? Where should AI augment human capability? And what can we completely reinvent? And that's another dimension which I think HR needs to own. And that's performance management and performance systems. Now, suppose AI turns a 3-day task into a 3-hour task, right? Now, what happens to the capacity that we've released? Do we simply give the person more tasks? Do we reduce headcount? Do we improve quality, spend more time with customers, innovate? Now, if our goals and KPIs still reward the old activity, we've changed the technology without changing the organization. So, uh, Microsoft had done a research in 2026, and they've spoken about a transformation paradox. So, 45% of AI users who were surveyed said it is safer to focus on current goals than redesign work with AI. And only 13% people said they were rewarded for AI enabled reinvention, even when results weren't achieved. So that's not an AI problem. That's a management system problem. So
Right.
AI, so HR should stop measuring AI success primarily through training completions, licenses, usage. They should measure the capacity release, cycle time, decision quality, customer experience, and the end value created for the business. Because AI adoption is a technology metric. That's not an org level metric. AI value is an org design outcome. And if we put AI on top of a broken process, we will just execute the broken process faster than actually achieve transformation.
Sure, sure. Wonderful. Loved how you differentiated efficiency, effectiveness, and transformation. Efficiency, the same work getting done faster. Effectiveness is getting the work done better. And transformation actually is something that challenges the way you do what you do. So asking that right question is very, very important. And
Hmm.
again, stop, simplify, augment and reinvent is something that is going to really help HR leaders to not just reduce tasks by automating things, but to be rather more thoughtful and thoughtful about what will be the measured outcome, what is more valuable to the organization. So, thank you so much for that. My next question, Danish, is what will distinguish successful leaders in an AI enabled organization? And how should HR rethink leadership assessment, succession, and development for an environment where leaders increasingly manage both people and intelligent systems?
So I think HR needs to ask an uncomfortable question, which is, are we selecting tomorrow's leaders using yesterday's definition of leadership potential? Because leadership itself is changing. Now, leaders have traditionally managed people, information, decisions. And increasingly, they will now manage people, AI agents, algorithms, information, and decisions. So, four capabilities now are particularly important, which is curiosity, judgment, orchestration, and humanity. Now, if I look at each of these, first, if I look at curiosity, now leaders don't need to become technologists because technological curiosity becomes non-negotiable.
Right.
But are they experimenting? Are they asking what AI makes possible? Can a senior leader learn from a 25-year-old employee who understands the technology better than they do? Then yes, you've demonstrated some form of curiosity. The second is judgment. Now, historically, knowledge created leadership value. Experience meant you knew things that other people did not. Now, AI makes information and answers more abundant.
Right.
So, I think something interesting happens here. So, as answers become abundant, the judgment becomes scarce, and the leader's value, you know, increasingly now comes from knowing which answer matters, whether that answer is credible, and what to do with that answer in their context. The third thing is orchestration that I was speaking about. Now, future leaders won't simply ask, uh, who on my team should do this? They may ask, should a human do this? Should an agent do this? Should it be an automated workflow? Should a human agent team work on this? Now, Microsoft has created a new role called agent boss, which is someone who builds, delegates, and manages AI agents. It's uh, the research that Microsoft did found that leaders expect uh, teams increasingly to train and manage agents over the coming years, right? And then, of course, there is humanity. Now, I actually think empathy and human leadership become more important because AI is becoming more capable, right? Imagine somebody who has spent 20 years becoming excellent at something and is suddenly told AI can now perform 40% of what made them valuable. Now, that's not a skill transition, it's more of an identity crisis, an identity transition. And leaders have to help people to redefine where their value comes from. So, there are few traditional leadership potential criteria I would like to add. So there's learning agility, there's digital curiosity, judgment, experimentation, work redesign capability, and the ability to lead human change. And I wouldn't develop these through classroom programs. You give leaders real processes to redesign with AI, let them experiment, make trade-offs, confront those ethical dilemmas, and then lead the resulting change. So in the AI era, I don't think the leader needs to be the smartest person in the room. They need to create the smartest combination of humans and machines in the room. That's the difference.
Sure. Thank you so much. I'll just pick out some points from your, pointers, which is curiosity, judgments, orchestration, and humanity. I hear you say that leaders should be okay saying that I don't know this technology. Maybe I would like to learn from my team member because they are new, they are young. That ability and the ability which I took away from your answer is to question the norms,
Yeah.
and not just follow what has been running over the years. So sometimes even experience is outdated because given the changes in technology and the workforce dynamics that keep changing, it's very, very important to ask the right questions and be relevant is what I understood. And great example there, on the agent boss from the Microsoft. So thank you so much for adding to that. This brings us to the last question, Danish, which is as AI increasingly influences hiring, performance, learning, and talent decisions. What governance should HR put in place to balance speed and intelligence with fairness, explainability, privacy, empathy, and human accountability?
So first and foremost, I think we need to avoid two extremes. Now, one is that AI should never influence people decisions. And I think that's unrealistic. Now, AI can identify patterns, process information at an enormous scale, and potentially also improve consistency. But a human is limited in that space, right? And the extreme opposite is also dangerous. Now, AI is objective, humans are biased. AI learns from historical data, human decisions, and organizational systems. So it can reproduce bias and potentially scale that bias. So, for consequential HR decisions, I'd use five tests. Uh, First one is purpose, then there is proportionality, explainability, contestability, and accountability. Now, purpose is just because we can predict something about an employee doesn't mean we should. Is the use legitimate and is it necessary? We need to take that judgment call. Then there's proportionality. Now, governance should match the consequence. Now, AI recommending a learning course is fundamentally different from AI influencing whether somebody gets hired, promoted, or exited, right?
Right.
Then there is explainability. Can we reasonably explain why the system made the recommendation? Contestability. Can the individual challenge it and receive genuine human reconsideration? And finally, accountability. Who owns that decision? If something goes wrong and the answer is that's what the algorithm recommended, which means governance has failed. And this isn't hypothetical. Now, under the EU AI Act, certain AI systems used in employment and worker management are classified as high risk, and they reflect precisely the potential that these systems can have on people's lives. But I'd go further than regulation because there's another danger, which is automation bias. Now, imagine AI recommends a performance rating and a manager clicks approve. Technically, we have a human in the loop. But if managers routinely accept the AI recommendation without genuinely interrogating it, the human isn't really exercising judgment. So I distinguish between human in the loop and human accountable. Human in the loop means somebody participated in that decision. Human accountable means somebody understood the evidence, exercised independent judgment, could override AI, and that person would own the consequences. And then, of course, there is empathy. Now, AI might identify that an employee's performance has declined over 6 months. It may identify the pattern extremely accurately, but it may not understand that the person has now a new manager, an unreasonable workload. Maybe the person is dealing with a personal crisis, or maybe the person is now in a wrong role. So, data can identify what is happening. Human can identify the context, and that will help us to understand the why behind the whole thing,
So,
right? So, my governing principle would be very simple. You delegate the intelligence, you don't delegate the accountability. We can delegate the analysis part. We can ask AI for recommendations. We can automate low risk decisions. But when decisions have significant consequences for people's careers, for people's lives, human accountability must remain at the center. And that's, the perspective that I hold.
sure, sure. Thank you so much. So there is purpose, there is proportionability, explainability, contestability, and accountability. And there is always going to be an automation bias But I think empathy is something that humans bring on the table. So, very important point you mentioned, that delegate the intelligence, but not the accountability. So, thank you so much. Great takeaways there. And this brings us to the end of this masterclass. Danish, thank you so much for your candid insights. I think
Thank you for having.
this conversation actually reminded me that AI is not simply about adopting new technologies or building literacy. It's rather more about equipping people with skills and mindsets and learning capabilities in this new age world. So thank you so much for your insights today.
Most welcome.